Welcome to the IoT Unicorn Podcast. This is Pete Bernard from Microsoft. We have a very special guest today. We're going to be talking about long-term technology trends in the IoT space. So let's get started. Today's conversation is with Philip van de Mortel from Intel. Intel is based in Santa Clara, California, as many of you know, although Phil is local, lives here in Redmond, originally from the UK. We'll talk a little bit about that. When you think of Intel, you really think of big chips, big powerful chips in the data center and PCs, but in fact, Intel's been doing some really interesting things in the IoT space, especially on the intelligent edge, and we'll talk a little bit about the edge and the cloud and where these workloads should fit, and Phil has some good insights, I think, as well, in terms of how we turn this technology into real solutions to solve business outcomes as opposed to just some cool tech. And that's ultimately what it's all about, is solving problems for customers. So we'll talk a little bit about that today as well. I thought it was a good conversation, good insight into Phil's journey to the US and what that's all about, and also where Intel is heading in their journey for IoT. Some fascinating stuff. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation with Phil.
Thanks, Pete. Yep, I'm very pleased to be here. And a quick introduction about myself. So I've actually I've been at Intel 15 years. I actually came through the graduate scheme so many years ago in the through the UK. Back then, I think Intel had a very different portfolio of products. So our 286, 386, 486 processors.
I remember those.
Storage processors, all of the networking processors. We also had NOR and NAND flash memory as well. So we were very relevant in the design phase for a lot of edge devices. And I've been in the Intel back then it was called the Embedded Group. Now it's the Internet of Things Group. And I've been in that division for pretty much all of my career.
Fantastic. Yeah, I started at Microsoft about 15 years ago too. So there you go. We have something in common.
Definitely.
So are you based in Santa Clara, by the way?
No, I'm actually based in Seattle. So I moved to Seattle earlier this year. So
right down the road.
Literally opposite the Redmond campus. So I was offered a chance earlier, sort of late last year, to move over to the US on a international transfer visa and work closely with Microsoft in the IoT space. So I decided to take it. Cool. I think the good story there is I told my wife, she broke down in tears and said she didn't want to go. So I think that went well.
What were her expectations? Obviously, she kind of had a negative reaction to moving to Seattle. But, is there a happy ending here? Did she end up loving this place or what?
Yeah, I mean, we're 7 months in, and the Pacific Northwest is a pretty unique part of the world. So, we're all settling in. I think if you'd have asked me after the 27 days of straight rain in Seattle in January, it might have been a different question, a different answer.
Yeah, that's true. I guess it's been kind of crazy up here, but even for Seattle, it's been a lot of rain. So, but I think you and your wife will enjoy now the weather's starting to almost turn to spring and stuff, so that's good. Cool. So you didn't spend time in Santa Clara, so you went from the UK to here.
I went from the UK to here. So actually started off and I actually looked after our Benelux business, so Belgium, Luxembourg and the Netherlands, and then took on the Nordics, so obviously the Scandinavian region, and then picked up the UK stuff, and then headed over to Seattle this year. So it's been a nice little journey. Good,
excellent. Okay, super. So now you're at Intel, and now you're here locally, and so what are some of the things with Intel and IoT that are sort of top of mind? I mean, when I kind of read about Intel and obviously Microsoft has a super long history with Intel, that we would use the entire podcast to start even scratching the surface on that. But Intel's making chips obviously for a lot of cloud infrastructure, a lot of edge devices, PCs. I mean, everything in between. But so what's top of mind for you when you have an IoT conversation from Intel?
So I think top of mind is is the core value proposition of Intel sort of embedded or IoT product portfolio, which is we manufacture a set number of CPUs, and other adjacencies, but a set number of CPUs, and we commit to manufacturing them for 15 years. So we can approach, and that's always been Intel's core in this space. So we handpick Atom processors, Core processors, Xeon processors, from the current and future generations, and then now we commit to keeping those in production for 15 years. So anyone that's doing an edge device or is looking to deploy an edge solution or an IoT solution that requires some compute that needs a longer than sort of an 18-month to 2-year cadence, there's plenty of options from Intel to satisfy that need.
Right. And so I guess one of the challenges, so by the way, I used to be in a group called the Embedded Group at a different company, and now I'm in the IoT group, so I totally hear you on that one. But it's, there are all these long life devices, long life, life cycles and support. But, also the space is rapidly changing. So how do you kind of resolve, like, even 5 years from now, what's the IoT space going to look like? And then how do you plan for that? How do you think about sort of the 5 or Horizon 3 kind of level experiences where you'll still have plenty of stuff shipping from like 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think it's certain segments, or verticals require, the different longevity and different compute. And I think certain segments will have certain demands. So in the medical space, by the time it gets medically certified, switching out designs, any time before sort of 5, 6, 7 years is cost prohibitive. So, but I think one thing that we where we have invested heavily and continue to invest is, I think if you just look over the last sort of 10, 15 years, what we've absolutely seen is, back then, customers were more open to doing their own sort of component level design, so designing their own PCBA, whether that was on Intel or microcontrollers, right? There was a path forward to do that. And I think what's happened definitely what I've seen is that the emergence of the sort of the single board computer vendors or the the module vendors. So now customers, we've got a nice choice of different form factors where they can engage and get a custom design for relatively aggressive overall NRE or overall price point. And we've invested heavily with that ecosystem to ensure that there's a plethora of Intel-based compute options in the market. And I think what we're seeing now is that that customers are now saying, well, actually, we want a complete solution. So we no longer want just the ingredients. The board's great, but actually, this is my problem, and how can you help me fix it with compute? Mm-hmm. I think that's where Intel and Microsoft are starting to reap some of the benefits together, especially in some of these segments where the use cases are crystal clear.
Yeah, I think I hear you. I think it's like, it used to be a very bespoke kind of techie development, one-off development for these kind of embedded systems, quote unquote. I'm making air quotes now, but now it's very solution oriented. People are like, just get me to my business outcomes as fast as possible. And, I don't need to like pour sand in one end and have the device come out the other. I wanted something that's a little more of a solution. And what's kind of interesting about Intel, it's kind of cool where you guys are at, is you pack a ton of horsepower into these chips. And so even if the software is doing, X workloads today and the cloud's doing X workloads, I'm sure 5-10 years from now, it'll be XYZ workloads, through all kinds of software updates and other things that you could still get a lot out of the platform. So I assume that's a big part of the Intel value prop.
Yeah, that reuse of code. So if you design on Intel today, you can port over to the next generation and beyond. So it sort of gives you that future proof. And I think what we're doing with Microsoft around sort of IoT Central and IoT Hub and some of the stuff specifically to hybrid. I think customers have now got the ability to manage devices into the cloud more efficiently. From Intel edge-based hardware into Intel edge-based cloud instances. So I think the journey which customers are looking to go on, I think Intel and Microsoft are well positioned to help them through that journey.
Yeah, for sure. And I think One of the interesting areas I know we've been working with Intel on is around AI, especially AI on the edge. And Intel acquired a company called Movidius a little while ago, and I know that you guys have some pretty cool stuff there. And that's probably an area where we're sort of on the beginning of a journey there with AI on the edge, and especially over time with, how the cloud works and how the edge works and where the workloads go. I mean, that's kind of a greenfield area, I think, for a lot of us to innovate on over the next kind of 5 years plus, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a tremendous amount of work going on, together in that space. And one great example, which is now in general availability, is the work that Intel and Microsoft have been doing with regards to Onyx integration with OpenVINO. So, at a high level, giving customers the option of training your model in the cloud and then delivering that inference at the edge on Intel Edge hardware using OpenVINO. Sort of it is the first time we can take a customer on that, train in the cloud, deliver at the edge, Microsoft Intel story, and that's been resonating. And I think what we've found is, this emergence of these data scientists that are creating the models, that have got the data sets, that are training these models. I think when they start to deploy those models on edge hardware, there needs to be a cost efficient way to deliver that inference at the edge. And we've done a lot of work around our vision processing unit with regards to the Movidius family, and we announced the next version of that, Keen Bay, a couple of weeks back. So we're going to be continuing to invest in that.
So Keen Bay, am I pronouncing it right? Keen, Keen.
Yep.
And so what is that? I'm always fascinated. The other thing that Intel has, you have a surplus of, are really cool code names. So where's Keen Bay? Is that in Canada?
Yeah, so the Intel naming convention is, if you follow national landmarks across the US, you'll start to see where some of these products are actually, or where they're called. And I think if you look at some of our networking products, you'll notice some of the sites across Israel as well. So the naming convention team are doing their best at the minute with lots of creeks and canyons and
right. Yeah, I'm kind of learning my geography here by following the roadmap from Intel.
That's it. But I think the one thing that is consistent is, and we're seeing it, is the demand for video based solutions and camera, and that's where we're sort of doubling down with our vision processing units.
Right.
And some of and OpenVINO obviously is allowing customers that have got a model, that have trained a model, they can run that through OpenVINO and look at how to optimize it on Intel hardware to deliver a more cost efficient inference at the edge. So, and there's some other things we're doing with Microsoft around how to really land it on the most optimal hardware software combination.
You obviously make lots of chips that are on the cloud too. I mean, you power probably the vast majority of clouds. And so how do you see that changing over time? Like there's always this discussion of where is the edge and what workload should be on the edge and why, and what workload should be on the cloud and why. I mean, is there, obviously Intel sort of plays both sides of the coin there, which is great, but is there any sort of, any kind of idea of like how that's going to evolve over time?
Yeah, so it's a question that definitely fascinates everyone on both sides, and there's lots of views on it around is it cloud to edge, is it edge to cloud, where is the influence? I think what we're seeing, and I think if you look at Microsoft's hybrid strategy, which also is intertwined with a lot of Intel based silicon, ultimately it's up to the customer to decide. And I think not all workloads will reside in the cloud. Not all workloads will reside on the edge. And I think having like a hybrid model is exactly where a lot of customers are at the minute.
Right.
And moving the compute to where it's needed. And and it's the classic examples. If you take video, you're simply not going to pump all of the video to the cloud to then analyze it and then send back what's relevant. That's going to be done real time, where latency is key. And I think the exciting thing is that if you look at some of the work that's going on in hybrid, if you take Azure Stack Edge as an example, Intel silicon, Intel memory, Intel FPGA on that first-party device from Microsoft. In a couple of examples where we've been working with some of the gold partner ISVs on specific end customers, we're really solving some pretty interesting problems which the customers are bringing up. One at a major retailer in the US is around stock level detection. So by putting the compute in store, by connecting a number of cameras, by training models using sort of Onyx and delivering that through OpenVINO, what the retailer is able to do is to get real-time data on what products are out of stock along each aisle, and provide that data back centrally to the store manager or the district manager, all real time. So again, a great example where you're taking the actual cloud and using that on edge compute to actually deliver insights that are relevant to the business and driving efficiencies. And I think that's the key there.
Yeah, and that's one of the conversations I get to, because I always get asked this question on panels and stuff. It's like, where is the edge? And I always say it depends on where you're standing, right? Because it's sort of like it could be the actual device edge, the sensor edge. It could be a gateway that's on-prem. It could be a on-prem Azure Stack Edge or a piece of hardware. It could be in a regional POP. It could be in a telco cloud. It could be in the hyperscale cloud. So I think we just need to make sure that there's optionality for people to be able to do their workloads, where they see fit. But let's talk about solutions again. So maybe, Phil, let me kind of bring it back to you again. People are looking to get to the business outcomes as soon as possible. Intel has like a truckload of tech. And so how do we sort of package this up with Microsoft and sort of get people to their business outcomes as fast as possible?
Yeah, so one thing that we've been investing quite a bit of time and effort with Microsoft is around edge to cloud or cloud to edge solutions from partners. So having an Intel edge based solution which is running either IoT Central, IoT Hub, which is consuming Azure services. And actually, so it is a true end-to-end solution. So we've got a program which is called the Market Ready Solution Program, which is exactly that, a true edge-to-cloud solution that we could walk into a customer tomorrow and they could engage and deploy through that one partner. And that program has been generating a huge amount of deployments and revenue for Intel. And what we've been doing working with Microsoft is looking at how do we cross-pollinate, which is, hey, Microsoft, we've got a great solution. It's running on Azure. Like, how do we go and help these guys that have got Intel and Microsoft in it? How do we go and help them sell it, into the market? Is the new use cases? Is the new verticals? Is the new countries? Can we help, down channel expand, the presence? So we're doing a lot of work around that, and it follows that natural evolution that we talked about. That originally it was we want a board, and we're no longer going to do our own design, and now it's a case of actually we want a complete solution. And a couple of the retailers actually gave us this feedback a number of years back, which is, hey, I don't want all the ingredients for the cake. I'm after a cake, so stop bringing me all the ingredients, because so
like that. So what's that? Blue Apron or something like that? Is that what you get? You get all the ingredients in a box, and then you can just make it. But yeah, I see. I get what you're. If you go to a restaurant, you don't expect them to bring you a bunch of ingredients, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so we've invested quite a lot, and I know Microsoft have invested a lot with the co-sell ready and the whole tune-up package and the great work that goes on there. So we've just spent a bit of time collectively with Intel and Microsoft to look at who are the ones we can. Let's pick a handful and help them really grow and scale. We look at the verticals, look at the problems that these partners are solving, and how we can take that wider into the market. We've seen some pretty good success in doing that. So I know that's something that we're going to continue to do, because I think driving edge, driving cloud, there's an absolute win-win there for us.
Yeah, and I think it's really key to be able to sort of pull those solutions together. I know that being at Microsoft now 15 years, you've been at Intel 15 years. It's like I've seen a journey here at Microsoft where we've had products that you would sort of get in a box and you would unwrap them and then use them. And I think our products these days are more like, tools in a toolbox as part of a solution, and maybe Intel's in the same sort of idea that we are producing technology that ultimately gets assembled into a solution for someone. And I think that's an interesting evolution at Microsoft that I've seen. And I think with a lot of partners around the world, and I think ultimately companies that can partner together well and sort of create those solutions for customers are the ones that'll end up really inventing the future. So it's pretty cool that we're working with you on that. Well, Phil, I really appreciate the time today. It's been great getting to know you and learning more about where Intel is heading in the IoT space. And any closing thoughts, words of wisdom?
I think the closing comments. Right, I think I think it's a really exciting time, and I think throughout this year you're going to see some pretty cool things from Intel and Microsoft start to come out. That takes advantage of that constant and increasing demand for cloud to edge solutions.
Right. Cool. Well, great. Sounds good. Well, I hope you and your wife enjoy the sunny weather this week, and tell her there's more to come.
Perfect. Thanks, Pete.
All right. Thanks, Phil. Appreciate it. This is Pete Bernard. You've been listening to the IoT Unicorn. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned for the next pod.